We ready for you, Pastor Bang.
God bless you. Good evening and praise be unto God who giveth us the victory. Welcome you into the second night of our state convention and to a class entitled The Critical Race Theory. The broader topic is a voice for the voiceless. To all of the panelists tonight, participants, thank you so much for joining us again on tonight, and pray that as we get into discussion of the subject matter, looking at different aspects from the central topic of the critical race theory, you'll chime in and offer some insight in aiding us to gain a better understanding of this subject matter. I must say that this is a work in progress. It has been thus far an interesting subject for me to tackle, and I thank God for the privilege to be sharing with you on tonight. Without further ado, let us petition the throne of grace and mercy. Our Father and our God, in the name of Christ, we bless and honor your holy name. We're grateful for another opportunity, God, to be able to share with others from a word that will help change our lives. And God, we just ask a special blessing upon our state convention for every leader, oh God, and for other colleagues who are teaching classes. God, pray that those who have zoomed in and tuned in, God, are being blessed by what is going forward. Thank you for the word tonight that went forth by the woman of God, and pray that you will sow back into her what she has sown into us as the listening audience. And then lastly, God, as your man of God, I pray that you will give us insight and foresight as we share these concepts and nuggets that come from the printed text, God. It may not be that we get the glory, but out of all things we do, you get the glory. So we bless your name and we give you praise and honor you on tonight. In Jesus' mighty name, we declare it done. Amen. Good evening to everybody. God bless you. Thank you again, Brother Robinson, for excellent work of sharing with us on tonight. And I must give a shout out to my beautiful wife, Lady Jacqueline Bain, for aiding me as well. It's good to be here on the second night of this awesome fall session of our state convention, and pray that it has been a blessing thus far. Again, I said on last night that I thank Dr. Minor for allowing me to tackle some of the subject matters he's given me in the past that have been somewhat controversial. And this one as well can be viewed by many, and has been viewed by many, as a very controversial topic that is still unfolding every day. And so let me just recap real quickly before we go into our new section that's called Intersectionality. Intersectionality is what we're going to be dealing with tonight, intersectionality. But let me just go back real quickly and try to bring back some nuggets from last night that were truly blessing to me to be able to share. Number one was, I said a statement that I had read and thought it was appropriate, and that was the original sin of America is the enslavement of Black people. That's the original sin of America, is the enslavement of Black people. And with that being said, echoing and piggybacking on our theme, voice for the voices, as members of the body of Christ, we are responsible to defend the voiceless and their earthly voices. As Black leaders are challenged to speak on behalf of those whom Jesus called the least, the less, and the lost. So we are to be a voice for those who are in need of someone standing in their stead. Now, again, I said the subject matter for this class is the critical race theory, and allow me to give you a definition. There's several, but let me give you a simple definition that has come about how we define the critical race theory, or the initials CRT. CRT examines social, cultural, and legal issues primarily as they relate to race and racism in America. Again, it talks about looking at, and one of the things that stand out in the definition is legal issues, which implies that the government will have some involvement in the situation that's going on with the critical race theory. And so I wanted to bring that back to pass because, as I talked about last night, it was interesting to me that the writer, who is a Caucasian woman by the name of Diane Klein, very knowledgeable, gifted woman, is giving her insights on the critical race theory from her point of view. So this is a Caucasian woman who's giving insight into the critical race theory from her point of view. She said something last night that was interesting before we continue to go on. She said something that after the Civil War and after the civil rights movements of the 60s, where it would have seemed like Afro-American people, Black people, if you will, would have gained more, things would have been better for us. She seems to suggest to us that even with all of these legislative things in place, the end of the Civil War and all of the legislation that went along with the civil rights movement, she says, instead of life getting better for Blacks and non-whites, life got worse. And she was challenged by that. Life got worse. And one of the things she also said was some of the issues, some of the laws, if you will, some of the laws that are on the books today are outdated, and there needs to be some rescinding of those laws, and some things need to be changed so that the Blacks and non-whites can be on equal footing, equal playing ground. But we know that with the way society is now, that's going to be a monumentous task for us to all be equal. Although the old statement is we all created equal, we know that that's not true, because there are some things that are going on in society today that tells us and shows us that we are not on equal footing. We talked about some of the issues last night, which would include the educational system, housing, residential segregation, jobs. All of those things led to discriminatory practices and systematic racism that was going on in our country, and yet remains in our country today. And so I wanted to just bring a few of the highlights from last night to bring us up to snuff on where we're going to start tonight. And for those of you who have a handout that I think Dr. Minor emailed to you, we're going to begin on page 7 on tonight. And the topic is intersectionality. Page 7 of our handout. We begin on tonight. In the 1980s, Professor Kimberly Crenshaw, a law professor at Columbia Law School and UCLA School of Law, coined the term intersectionality to talk about, catch this, how race and sex, or gender combine in each person's experience. Let me say it again. She coined the term intersectionality to talk about how race and sex or gender combine in each person's experience. She was a student of Derek Bell, and she is also a leader of the critical race theory. Specifically, Professor Crenshaw focused on how Black women had a different experience of Blackness than Black men, and had a different experience of being a woman than white women had. So with all that, there's a stop and think section right now. And it says this for us to consider. In your life, in the lives of people you know, how has the experience of growing up as a Black boy or Black girl, or living as a Black man or Black woman been different than your brothers, sisters, friends of the opposite sex? That's something that all of us can ponder, ask ourselves the question, how has my life as a Black child, a Black boy, a Black girl, how has my life as a Black man and a Black woman been different from our counterparts? We call our brothers, our sisters of the opposite. You have to evaluate that yourself. And I know some of you have stories that can testify that there has been a difference made concerning how Black men and Black women and Black boys and Black girls are treated versus our counterparts. So catch this. What are experiences, what are expectations or ideals about Black manhood and Black womanhood different? Why? How are these experiences, expectations and experiences and ideals about Black manhood and Black womanhood different? Well, there is a human totem pole that I've evaluated that seems to suggest how we rank Black men, Black women, white men, white women. And the totem pole seems to suggest that at the top of it is white men. Second in line is white women. The third in line is Black women. And the fourth in line is the Black man. Think what I'm saying. It is the Black woman, it is the white man, the white woman, the Black woman, and the Black man. Class, pardon me for just 1 second. There's some noise in my background I need to take care of. Stay there. I'll be right back. God bless you. Thank you for that moment. I appreciate it. Needed to just control the noise. Praise the name of the Lord. And so I'm back to it. The totem pole was the white man, the white woman, the Black woman, and the Black man. In many instances, the Black man has faced tremendous hostility and disrespect. And we've been treated differently than our Black women. Why? Some seem to suggest that there's a fear factor in society as it deals with Black men. There's a challenge with dealing with Black men from some perspectives of those of the opposite race. But it seems that in the latter 20 to 30 years, there's been a real push to enhance the abilities and opportunities for Black women. Let's see, let's keep going. How is racism experienced differently by Black women and Black men? Well, I think I just shared with you some of the ways in which there's a difference of racism. There's more of a tolerance for Black women than there may be for Black men. And because, again, the things I mentioned, there is this fear by our counterparts of Black men. But I must say that as a Black man myself, we thank God for where he has us now and where he's raising us to and the standards he's developing for us. And it's so important, this is a sidebar statement I'm making, it's so important that those of us who are seasoned Black men take our young Black men and try to aid them in understanding how to be men in a society as we're dealing with today. So that is a sidebar that I feel is very necessary. I still believe opening the door, I still believe yes, sir, yes, ma'am, will get you a long way in life. Praise the name of the Lord. Well, some approaches to civil rights for Black people, like the first attempt to get voting rights for Black people after the Civil War, left out Black women. Again, some approaches to civil rights for Black people, like the first attempts to get voting rights for Black people after the Civil War, left out Black women. By the way, white women couldn't vote either back then. No woman could vote in the United States until the 19th Amendment in 1919. So although the civil rights for Black people was the first attempt to get voting rights for Black people after the Civil War, not only were Black women left out, but white women couldn't vote either. Praise the name of the Lord. Well, then it asks the question, have you heard of women's lib? I know our dean can talk about that. Dean Miller can talk about women's lib. Women now have the freedom to work on any job, what they can see, they believe they can do. And so opportunities have truly sprang up for women in various arenas of society. So have you heard of the term woman's lib? In the 1970s, there was a movement for women's rights, whether it's called feminist or women's lib, short for liberation. Too often, the only people in charge and the only people who mattered were white women. So in the 70s, when this was instituted, it was sort of slanted towards benefiting white women. For example, when the white feminists in the 1970s focused on giving women a chance to work and not be trapped at home, they ignored the fact that most Black women had already worked and that many Black women were unable to be at home or raise their own children. Instead, white women children is whom they raised, is what liberation would mean to them. I remember some of the stories having listened to my grandmother and my mother and great-grandmother talking about having to work outside the home in the Caucasian house. And they would raise their children and spend a lot of time with their children and neglecting positive and quality time with their own children. They were so busy raising somebody else's children, they really didn't have time to raise their own. And know that Black women have always worked for a long time outside of the house. They've always been laborers for the most part outside of the house. So it was nothing new for us to work, for Black women to work outside the house, because they've been accustomed to doing it. But the fact of the matter says that when the white feminists of the 70s focused on giving women a chance to work, they really ignored the fact, they overlooked the fact, didn't acknowledge the fact that Black women have always worked outside the house. So there was nothing new for them to do. And they were found raising someone else's children. Professor Crenshaw wasn't the first one to notice this. The famous speech by Sojourner Truth, "Ain't I a Woman?" made a very similar point. So did the authors of one of the first books of Black women's studies. All the women are white, all the Blacks are men, but some of us are brave. Praise the name of the Lord. I like that. All the women are white, all the Blacks are men, and some of us are brave. And this book came out in 1993. But Professor Crenshaw's idea and the word intersectionality caught on. It was the right ideal at the right time. It was a new way of thinking for people who were refused by civil rights movements and legal approaches that seemed to focus on only one aspect of the person. This is why intersectionality is so important. Let's define intersectionality. It is the interconnected nature of social categorization. In other words, organizing things into categories such as race, class, gender, as they apply to given individuals or groups, regarded as creating overlap and interdependent systems of discrimination or disadvantage. Think about that. Categorizing all of us, and y'all all know who on the panel with me tonight, that sometimes they say we all are the same. We all look alike. Well, that's not true. That's not true, because the Bible tells us that each one of us is uniquely and wonderfully made. So we're not all the same. There's differences in us. But the writer suggests to us that she's trying to determine in the intersectionality here to remind us that every one of us has so many aspects to ourselves. We're all different. There are some things that the panelists are more gifted at doing than I am, and vice versa. We're all different. But there was a time where we thought that they thought we were all the same. That's the reason why I don't want nobody to categorize me being like somebody else when they don't know me. You need to get to know the individual before you make an assessment or just group me into all of them do bad. No, all of them do this. I've told them out of the church, I'm careful about using the words all and every, because it's not always and everybody ain't doing it. Praise the name of the Lord. It's not all the time and everybody ain't doing it. So I'm very careful with using the words all and every. So Professor Crenshaw really points out the fact that intersectionality is here to remind us that every one of us has so many aspects to ourselves. We all belong to many different groups at the same time. Often we notice how we are different from those around us and how certain aspects of ourselves have led to discrimination. You know, we're discriminated for a lot of things. There are a lot of things that we're discriminated for. Example, the color of our skin. The color of our skin can be a point of discrimination. The level of education, handicaps that a person may have can be issues for discrimination. So discrimination varies from person to person, but it is real. Catch this. We may not notice aspects of ourselves that give us advantage over some others, but some aspects of ourselves put us in the majority. Others put us in the minority. Sometimes the majority is also the most powerful group and discriminates against those who are the minority. I like that. That is so true. That is so true. Yes. We will, Dean, we will break at that time. So just give me some notification as to the time. So some aspects of ourselves put us in the majority. Others put us in the minority. Sometimes the majority is also the most powerful groups and discriminate against those who are in the minority. Again, I'm piggybacking on the theme of voice for the voiceless, and Jesus challenges us to be voices for the least, the less, and the lost. Those are the ones who are in the minority. And those of us who can speak should speak with power, boldness, and conviction on behalf of those who cannot. So we must be concerned. The old cliche theme is, we are our brother's keeper. And the Bible says the strong should bear the infirmities of the weak. So we should be there to undergird and to help those that stand in the need. Praise the name of the Lord. So now in our study, there's a stop and think. It says, what aspects of yourself, not just your race, put you in a group that has been historically discriminated against and disadvantaged? Let me stop here and ask someone to home in on that. What aspects of yourself, looking at yourself, what aspects of yourself, not just because you're Black, put you in a group that have seemed to be historically discriminated against and disadvantaged? Anyone who wants to home in, do so. All right.
I think just being a woman, Pastor, has put us in a group, you know, not just Black women, but just being a woman.
I like that. That is absolutely true. Just being a woman, no matter Black, white, non-white, puts us in that disadvantage group that you mentioned. And because of that, there's been discriminatory practices. You were qualified for the job all the way around. You had all the credentials, but because you were a woman, they didn't want to hire you. Praise the name of the Lord. And also with that aspect, and again, they said, not just looking at race, we talked about handicaps can be points of discriminatory practices. Laws are enacted in place to combat that, but sometimes I wonder, do those laws have teeth? Do those laws have teeth? Because still there's some people who desire to have opportunities to make a better life for themselves that have handicaps that cannot be given, that will not be given the opportunity. Someone else. Thank you, Dean. I appreciate your input. Well, on the flip side of being a part of the group that is discriminated against at disadvantage, do you also belong to other groups who enjoy advantages? Well, we talked about the other night that acknowledging it or not, there is still a good old boys network. It's still functional today. It may not be as prevalent outwardly, but it's still functional. There's some people who are part just because they're white, they get breaks. Help me, Holy Ghost. Just because they're white, they get breaks. And we find that really in the judicial system. An Afro-American can do this, black man can do this crime, the white man do the same crime, and the white man get lesser time. The black man get time that should have gone to the white man added on his time. So he gets 10 years, but a black man gets 50 years. There we go. Because you're part of what? The group that has the advantages. Okay, let's keep going. On this list, the majority or more privileged identity is listed first, and other identities are listed after that. Race, catch it again. Race, white, black, African Americans, Hispanic, Asians, Hispanic, indigenous are all on that group. Number one, sex, gender, men, women, religion, Christian, Muslim, Jewish, Hindu, Buddhist, and atheist. Physical health, able-bodied, healthy, disabled, sick. Citizens, natural-born citizens, naturalized citizens, immigrants, and undocumented persons. Language, English speaker, non-English speaker. Can you think of others not included? Well, most of the time on an application you put in, praise the name of the Lord. On an application that you put in, most of the times these questions are on the applications that you must answer. What's your race? What's your gender? Oftentimes what your religious preference is. They have to be very careful with the physical health because of the HIPAA laws. So they have to be very careful in asking that. But they do ask about citizenship, and a lot of applications will ask you about the language. Are there other things that you think that you've seen on lists that are not mentioned in what I just read? Is there anybody else? Can you think of other things? I know work experience on some applications. Anybody else? All right. Well, moving right along. Intersectionality reminds us that most people are not privileged in every way or disadvantaged in every way. So it reminds us that there is some who are privileged and that there are some who are not privileged. Each of us has a unique combination of identities, advantages, and challenges. Each one of us on this panel tonight can attest to the fact that there are some strong points, some strong suits in who we are. Then there are some challenges in who we are. We are identified in various ways. So all of us who are on the panel tonight can attest to the fact that this is a true statement that relates to us, that we have unique combinations of identities, advantages, and challenges. Questions? Anybody got any point they want to make at this time? I think we're up against a break. Is that right, Dean?
We were going to do break at 7:45.
Okay. We'll keep.
If you need to do it now, that's fine.
Let's do it now because we're going to get into another subject matter when we come back. So instead of starting it, let's start it after the break. So why don't we take a break now? I think you allocated 10 minutes, so we'll do a 10-minute break now, and then we can get into the next session, which talks about white privilege.
Okay.
Praise the name of the Lord. All right.
All right.
We'll take a break now. God bless. Thank you all for being on with us tonight. 10 minutes. He God bless, and we thank God for those who are on with us. Happy to see Pastor Curtis White, Sister Margie Watkins, who's on with us, and I think Sister Maggie Smith was on a few moments ago. Thank all of you and others who are not, their names are not showing up, but yet you're with us tonight. We thank you for sharing with us, and hope that the discussion thus far has been intriguing and challenging, but also caused you to think about some of the things that are really going on in our society. Let me stop here and say that this critical race theory has come on attack, that there are 8 states, including the state of Tennessee, that have not and will not allow it to be taught in the school systems. Tennessee is one of those states that will not allow the critical race theory to be taught in their school system. And somebody asked the question, what are they trying to hide? Just food for thought. What are they trying to hide? Well, the next section of our study is going to be on page number 10. It's entitled White Privilege. White privilege is simply the idea that all people who are white or appear to be white enjoy certain unearned advantages in American life. Let me stop there. There's not anything for me to stop there, but I just choose to stop there and go back over that statement once again. White privilege is simply the ideal that all people who are white or appear to be white enjoy certain unearned advantages. Listen, sometimes in the white society, and I've said it before and I'm saying it again, you're handed some things just because of your family affiliation, just because of who you know, and I'm overplaying this statement, but I'm going to share it again, and the good old boy network. In other words, there's some whites who have earned some things they didn't have anything to do with it. It was just given to them. So we must understand that there are some people who really think that because they're white, they're right. Praise the name of the Lord. Catch this. The writer says, as I continue the phrase, white privilege is simply the idea that all people who are white or appear to be white enjoy certain unearned advantages in American life that are not enjoyed by people of color, especially Black people. We might say that white privilege is the flip side of structural racism. The fact that white privilege exists and might seem obvious, especially to Black people. Yes, we see it every day. Black people, we see it every day played out on the stage of life, how it seems like they are there's an obvious thing about, there we go, there's an obvious thing about white people believing that they are more privileged than we should be. Now catch this, and let me continue. The fact that white privilege exists might seem obvious, especially in Black people, but it is not obvious at all to many white people. Why? Because they're blinded by it. They're blinded by it. That's the reason why it's not obvious to them, because they're blinded by it. They seem to think ain't nothing wrong. But you and I, who are of Afro-American descent, know that there are some things that are wrong in our society today that point to the fact that they're giving breaks when we are not. And so it saddens me that we're in a situation now, and a lot of our young people are seeing it come to pass. They're asking the questions, why are we not able to have these things? Why are we not given these opportunities? And so it's obvious to us as Black people that this is real. It's a real situation that's going on in society today. And
Brother Robinson?
I'm back, and I apologize for technology. We're living in a day where the unexpected happen. So I trust everybody has remained with me. Thank you, Brother Robinson. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Sir, you're good.
Right. We're going to go back into where we were. And again, let me give my sincere apology for what took place. I was talking about, prior to the situation that went about, I was talking about how a lot of white people have blinders on, just don't want to acknowledge the fact that some of them operate as if they are God's greatest gift to humanity. And the writer says this in that instance: the fact that white privilege exists may seem obvious, especially to Black people, but it is not at all obvious to many white people. And many white people are insulted by the ideal that they have succeeded through anything other than their own hard work. Come on now. Come on now. Let's be honest with that. Come on now. They're talking about, well, I worked hard to get where I am, but we know along the way there were some things, privileges given them just because, some advancement just because they are white. The writer says they have acknowledged that others have suffered discrimination. They will acknowledge that, but they do not want to acknowledge that they have received benefits that they really didn't earn or deserve. Come on now, let's be real about that. I said earlier, there were some opportunities that should have gone to a well-equipped, knowledgeable Black man or woman that was not given to them, and they were bypassed because of their skin color. And then when the person who's white gets the job and there's conversation about it, they become offended when we say, now, you know, you really don't deserve this job. And they will become offended by saying, no, this wasn't given to me. I earned this. Come on, let's be real. Come on, let's be real. We do know that that practice does go on by pushing people up the ladder just because they are white. But there came, some of them says that, and again, let me read the statement because I like what it says. They may acknowledge that others have suffered discrimination. They may say, yeah, you know, you've been treated misfairly. They'll rally at the job and talk about, no, they're not treating you right. But what do they do about it? But they do not want to acknowledge that they have received benefits they did not earn or deserve, but that came from them simply because they or their parents were white. Denying that there is structural racism in America and denying that there is white privilege goes hand in hand. We don't discriminate in housing. We don't discriminate in residential segregation. We don't discriminate in the point. So since we don't discriminate in those areas, we don't discriminate or say that there is white privilege. But the writer says, and again, it's interesting that this comes from the point of view of a Caucasian woman. She says that to deny that that there's structural racism and deny that white privilege is in place is to have blinders on, to have your head stuck in the sand, because it is evident that it is a real issue. Okay, in 1989, a white professor by the name of Peggy McIntosh published an article called White Privilege, Unpacking the Invisible Knapsack. She used the ideal of knapsack full of privileges to bring white people's attention to the issue. So those of you who have a handout see that there's an image of a backpack that has white privileges written on it. And she says, unpacking the invisible knapsack. Unpacking the invisible knapsack. This is what she does in the article. She did not focus on the very large scale issues of structural racism that we have already talked about: wealth and poverty, criminal justice, educational inequalities. Instead, she focused mostly on some day-to-day things that she herself didn't notice much of the time, but they are benefits of her being a white person in America. Let's see. I'm going to read just a few of them because she has a long list of them. I'm going to read just a few of them. She said, I can be pretty sure that my neighbors in such a location will be neutral or pleasant to me. She says, I can go shopping alone most of the time, pretty well assured that I will not be followed or harassed. Now, this is a white woman who's giving a list of things that she thinks are privileges for us in society today just because she's white. She says, I can turn on the television or open up the front page of the paper and see people of my race widely represented. And to put a footnote there, normally they're represented in a positive manner. Praise the name of the Lord. She goes on to say this also. She says, when I am told about our national heritage or about our civilization, I am shown that people of my color made it what it is. Well, we know that that is not true. We know that that is not true. The opening statement I gave to y'all is coming up again. And that is that the original sin of America is the enslavement of Black people. Black people built America. Black people built America. Historic fact is the White House was built by Black labor. So Black people were instrumental in building America. Praise the name of the Lord. But catch another point she makes. I can be sure that my children will be given curriculum material that testifies to the existence of our race. Praise the name of the Lord. She goes on to say some other things, and I want to say this. I can go to the music shop and count on finding the music of my race represented, into a supermarket and find the staple foods which fit with my cultural traditions, into a hairdresser shop and find someone who can cut my hair. Listen to this one. Whether I use checks, credit cards, or cash, I can count on my skin color not to work against the appearance of financial reliability. I like that one, because isn't it funny how sometimes when we go to lending institutions, you'll be surprised at the number of questions we get versus the number of questions that they get. Praise the name of the Lord. And then some people are judged just on their appearance. Appearance can be deceiving, but you'll find out that there oftentimes people are judged based upon their appearance. So she's saying, if I write a check or use a credit card or cash, just because I'm white, they're going to believe that I can pay for whatever I want to pay for. They don't have a problem with telling me, hey, we don't know if we can give you this because we don't know if you got enough money to pay for this. They just believe it because they're white that they can pay for it in the long run. Come on, somebody. Come on, somebody. I'm moving down the line. I'm not dealing with each one of them. I'm just picking out the ones that seem to be prevalent to us today. She says in number 17, I can be pretty sure that if I ask to talk to a person in charge, I will be facing a person of my race. Come on. And if that's not the case, that they want to talk to a person in charge and the person in charge is not of their race, they try to talk down to that person. Praise the name of the Lord. They're trying to talk down to the person as if they're not qualified to occupy that position of authority. Let's see. Number 18, if a traffic cop pulls me over or if the IRS audits my tax returns, I can be sure I haven't been singled out because of my race. My God. My God. She says this, and number 21, I can take a job with affirmative action employer without having coworkers on the job suspect that I got it because of my race. Now, again, let me preface this by saying these are the viewpoints of Professor McIntosh as she talks about white privilege in America. And she's just pointing out to a list of 25 things and even more of what she considers privileges for just being white. And these privileges are not given to you and I as being black. She says, I can be sure, number 23, I can be sure that if I need legal or medical help, my race will not work against me. My. 25 is sort of humorous. I can choose blemish cover or bandages in flesh color and have them more or less match my skin. That's humorous right there. That's a humorous one right there. So let me stop and raise the question with the panelists tonight. What do you feel about some of these things? Is she on point with what she's presenting to us as legitimate privileges that white people are enjoying over and beyond black people and non-white people? Are these things intact with how you believe about some of these things? I'm opening it up to parable. Before I go there, let me go to number 13. I can do well in a challenging situation without being called a credit to my race. Number 14, and then we'll ask the question. I am never asked to speak for all people of my racial group. My. I guess she's throwing a punt because we oftentimes talk about the voices for black people, the black leaders in our society. And that's being very respectful when I say this, as we looked at Dr. King, and some say Malcolm X, and some say even today, Al Sharpton and Ben Crump. These are people who are out front speaking for black people. But she says, I don't have to do that because I'm white. Just my white speaks for myself. All right, I'm parking here. Anybody got any points or statements they want to make concerning what I've just talked about? White privilege. Anybody?
Pastor Ben, I put a comment in the chat.
Okay.
This is almost similar to the quote talk that we as parents must have with our young Black men. We have to remind them of some things that you don't automatically get privileges for, but that you are denied because of the color of their skin.
Yes. Yes.
For example, if you get pulled over, this is the way you must talk. These are things you must say. If you cannot be, you got to be always calm. You can't get upset. You got to always say yes, sir. We have to tell our young men that. So this is kind of like the reverse of what we have to tell our young men to think about.
Exactly.
Put your hands outside of the window when the police pulls you over. Just things that we have to let our young men know just to protect them.
And even in today, our young women have to be told the same thing. Our young Black women are told the same thing, but it is more prevalent with Afro-American young Black men. We're told, put your hands, and you are absolutely, you took the example out of my mouth. That is a great example. Also, think about this one, going on interviews and wearing your pants down and sitting up straight in the chair and being able to put sentence structure together and being able to look the interviewer in the eye as if there's a bolt of confidence in you. You are absolutely right. Those things we have to reiterate. And this is the sad thing about it. Every time our young person goes out, we're almost moved to tell them the same thing over and over again. Because they've got to get it in their heads that it is disparity going on in society today. And this lady points it out. She's very candid. She's very clear as she points out these things about how she feels. How she feels. She's been privileged because she is white. Praise the name of the Lord.
I've even been told that I could not interview because I wore braids.
Yes. Yes. There was an incident some time ago where an Afro-American young man was involved in wrestling and he had braids. And the coach told him if he did not cut his braids, he cannot wrestle for the championship.
I remember that.
And what happened was he cut them because he wanted to have an opportunity to win the championship, which I believe he did. But his father afterwards took issue with it and brought it to the national forefront of what had happened to his son. That's a discriminatory practice. Now, the kid, I believe, for those on the panel, had been wearing the braids all the time, I believe. And then all of a sudden, there has to be this change of heart and rules have to change in order to cause this young man to part with something that was a part of his identity, his heritage. Yes, you're right. I believe that, Dean, that you maybe had gone to a job and because your hair was in braids, they told you come back tomorrow because they were frightened by you representing your nationality.
It's crazy.
Come on.
Your hair has nothing to do with it.
Nothing to do with your what? Intellect, nothing to do with your ability to do the job.
Exactly.
Nothing to do with it. But that person made your hair the focal point. That person made your hair the issue that would probably disqualify you from working at this company without even having you share with them what your credentials was to be able to work there. Come on, I'm listening.
That was interesting to me. And now you look at these people and you look at society and everybody's hair is any way that it wants to be. It could be blue now. That does not affect the person.
No. But if you happen to go to one of those companies that is run by old minds, that the old leadership that thinks a certain way, you may be challenged with that today. But here's the thing about today versus that day. there are stances being made, and I applaud them. Y'all all remember the Black Lives Matter movement and some other movements that have come about. Our young people are starting to take stances on issues that they feel they're being discriminated against. And I'm grateful that they are allowing their voices to be heard. That gives me the assurance that our next generation, unless the Lord comes back, has strong, possibly strong leadership of individuals who can now make a stance, talking for the most part, talk intelligent, and be on equal footing with those that now they have to listen to them. So you're right in your assessment of what you just said, Dean. And I haven't, for the most part, faced that kind of discrimination on the job. But there have been other times where I felt like I was discriminated against because of my color of my skin. And it's sad to say, but it is true to say. Anybody else before we go on further? We'll be on page 12. And thank you so much, Dean Miller, for your input. Very insightful and truly added to the study on tonight. Okay, let's go to page 12. It says, some people who deny that white privilege exists point out that many white people are poor and that many white people are incarcerated. Hold up a minute. On last night, we looked at statistics based upon the research done by Dana Klein that said that Black men are incarcerated at a rate of 12% and increasing, whereas the number for white men or white people didn't change. So we know that most of the incarcerated people in society today are Black men for the most part. But the writer tries to point out to get us to think that many white people believe that white people are poor and that many white people are incarcerated just like Blacks. But catch what the writer says, as if this is something disproved by white privilege. This is a misunderstanding. Things do not always go well for individual white people, of course, but white privilege does not mean that every white person succeeds or has an easy life. Now it seems like the tone is changing a little bit. It means that of all the challenges faced by white people, their race will never be one of them. I agree with that. Would you? I think our panelists would agree with that. With all the challenges that white people face, it'll never be a problem about their race. There can be other issues, but it won't be centered around their race. Yes, I like that. It's a very valid point to bring out. They may succeed or fail for many reasons: good luck, bad choices, tragedies, and all the other things that affect people's lives happen to white people. But in America, they will never be disadvantaged by their race. Do you not know that oftentimes agencies will help a poor white person faster than they will help a poor Black person? A white person will be given greater opportunities for the better things than a Black person, and both of them are poor. Again, it points back to this privilege being associated with being white. Intersectionality and the concept of white privilege challenges us to think more inclusively about the stories we tell about our lives and about what equality means. It asks which voices are included, heard, and honored, and which are silent, dismissed, and marginalized. Think about that statement. Think about that statement. It talks about being careful and challenges us to think as we share the stories about our lives. It talks about Those that are privileged are heard and honored, or those of us who are disadvantaged are silenced, dismissed, and marginalized. Catch this last point to this point of the study of white privilege. When we teach and learn history from an intersectional perspective, we ask, who wrote this history? Are people of all races, sexes, genders, and classes included? Think about that. Are the voices of the rich people and poor people, of victims, of wrongdoers, of winners and losers, all being heard? Who's missing? What can we do to bring them in to achieve a more complete understanding? When we teach and learn history, we ask those questions. Who wrote this history? Are people of all races, sexes, genders, and class included? Are the voices of the rich people and the poor people, of victims and wrongdoers, of winners and losers, all being heard? Who's missing? What can we do to bring them in to achieve a more complete understanding? I went back to point out a couple things on the heels of white privilege, and think about this. There is no gender justice without racial justice. There is no gender justice without racial justice. And when I wrote that down to share with the class tonight, also coming to my mind was a portion of the famous speech made by Dr. King. And it concurs with, it really gives us insight, mind you, of white privilege. Listen to what Dr. King said in his famous speech, I Have a Dream. He says, I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. And this statement made by Dr. King speaks volumes to the ideal, including the intersectionality concept. We talked about white privilege tonight. We talked about how white people benefit from privileges that are given them, some that are unearned just because of affiliation. We talked about tonight how they sometimes have blinders on to come to the realization that discrimination is really prevalent today. Oh, it ain't all that bad. They get a lot of breaks. No. We talked about that. We have the author who brought this up and gave us some examples of things that she thought were privileges given to white people just because they were white. But Dr. King's speech says that one day he hopes this nation, America, will get away from things such as white privilege and have equal footing for all people of any race, any creed, any color, all people. He says it in that statement, I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where, praise the name of the Lord, where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but as Dean Miller alluded to, but by the content and the quality of their character. So, as we talk about white privilege, as we talk about how there are those who seem that it is not a problem, it is a problem that has existed for a long time. And you'll be surprised that it even exists today. All right, let's stop and ask the panelists, are there any more insights into the portion of our study that deals with white privilege? Is there anybody who has anything that they may want to add to this point about white privilege? Man, praise the name of the Lord. Well, I think tonight that I'm up against the time. Dean Miller class time is up until 8:30 tonight. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. That's correct.
Okay. I really would like not to begin the 1619 project until tomorrow, because it takes our minds into somewhat a different perspective. But let me just, for the next few moments that I have tonight, just go back and sort of recap some of the things that we've covered on tonight that will aid us in gaining a better understanding of this intersectionality that was going on. Again, I defined it for you earlier, and I'll define it once again. Intersectionality is the interconnected nature of social categorization, sorting, organizing things into certain categories, such as race, class, and gender. We know race, black and white, class, middle class, rich class, poor, gender, black, white, and others. Praise the name of the Lord. As they apply to a given individual or group, regarding as creating overlapping and interdependent systems of discrimination or disadvantage.
Okay, Pastor Banks.
Yes.
One question.
Please.
So we had an event that occurred in Washington, D.C. on January, I believe it was the 6th or January 7th.
Yes.
Okay.
Insurrection. The insurrection.
So I've had several of my friends say, had that been a group of African Americans, someone would have gotten killed. I have been the policeman. We have dropped gas, and that our military certainly knows how to go to war. Our people know how to do that. But for some reason, this did not occur. You have any comments on that?
Yes, I sure do. It brought chuckle to me, because the first question you asked, if it had been all black, the Capitol wouldn't still been standing. The Capitol probably would have been blown up, because they would have tried their best to stop that insurrection real quickly. They would have stopped that real quickly. This is the humorous point, and then I'll get back serious. Black people would have gotten there really fast. They got a way of getting into stuff real fast. They wouldn't have been, they would have gotten there real fast. They'd have found the vice president, everybody. You know, we got a way of doing it. But you saw the force of resistance that was put up in the insurrection. That you said it a moment ago. We have armed forces that know how to dismantle riots like that, but they allowed them to continue to go on. They allowed them to continue to go on. And
they didn't bring out the dogs. They didn't bring out hoses that they brought out during the
right. Why?
The civil rights.
It was. Go ahead. I'm listening.
They didn't bring any of those things out, but they did during civil rights.
Yes, because there's a very clear-cut reason. Some people were white.
Guns. African Americans didn't have guns. Blacks and Hispanics were not carrying weapons. It was all nonviolent. Right. Now, carrying guns and everything.
They were carrying guns, swastika, all kinds of stuff. Yeah, but look at the resistance that was put up from a national point of view, national intervention versus what happened to us in the 1960s. You made mention of a great fact. We dealt with all of these things, dog, I think bull, I'm trying to remember the guy's name who was
Bull Connor.
Bull Connor. Just the atrocities, the horror went on with us, and it was perpetrated against Black people and some sentimental white people. Let's be honest about it, okay?
Right.
There were some sentimental white people who knew that discrimination and those things that were going on in the 60s were wrong. The civil rights of Afro-American people were being stamped on and we were not being treated the way we ought to. But when this insurrection came, because it was spurred on by the president in his comments, which he's trying to back out of now, the retaliation from the national armies and the guards didn't come in to disperse that till later on. But it would have been us when they saw 10 of us getting together. Help me, Holy Ghost. Yes. Don't let it be 300 of us getting together. They're gonna call out here the National Guard. Wait a minute, we got too many Black people up here. So you got that's a very good observation.
And they're trying to say that it was not an insurrection. They're trying to minimize what happened.
Because of that president.
And because of
that president. He can say whatever he wants to. You and I both know, and the other panelists know, he fueled the fire. He fueled the fire. All they needed, he said in so many words, go.
Right.
In so many words, he said, go do this. And then the thing, just think about this. Catch this. Tammy Sawyer from Memphis was up there yesterday and got arrested right away. Her and another 25 others got arrested in Washington, D.C. for protesting the filibustering that was going on in the Senate.
Wow.
Come on.
And then they're trying to arrest the senators in Texas because they got on a plane and went to D.C. and didn't want to vote in Texas.
Yes.
So the governor said he's going to arrest those senators once they get off the plane and make them come back and take a vote.
Yes. And the newly elected senator from Georgia is really fighting for voting rights in Georgia. Listen, I thought we got beyond that. I thought we got beyond that when we got the voting rights. I thought we got beyond that, but now they're acting as if those things have not been legislated.
Right.
And we saw that in the past presidential election, while President Trump focused on Georgia, a southern state, red in color. But it backfired on
number of votes.
Backfired on them. So what are you saying in essence? Racism, classism is still existent today.
Color of your skin matters. Yes.
It can be hidden under various things, but at the end of the day, when the rubber meets the road, it's still what it is. Call it what it is. It's still the discriminatory practices, especially with the voting rights in Georgia being perpetrated on people of color.
That's crazy.
Very good point, Dean.
Yeah.
Very good
we have
point.
To be careful.
Very good talking.
Yeah,
we have to be careful because you'd be surprised at the things that are being taken away from us under the rug. And if we have if we're not awake at the wheel, I like to say, if we're not awake at the wheel, these things will happen and they'll affect us and we won't know what hit us. Right.
Because I believe it's 32 states have already changed the voting right in that state of how you can vote early and early vote. So we really stay active.
And that's what President Trump did not want us to have was early voting.
Yes.
He felt like, oh no, wait a minute. I didn't correct myself. I think he wanted early voting. Am I right or wrong?
I don't think that he wanted us to vote early. He didn't. I don't think he wanted to vote. I don't think.
Okay, I thought that's why I thought he didn't want early voting because he felt like he was going to lose. Well, he did lose anyway.
But I think he felt like we would not go to stand in line because we are not as diligent in voting as
participating in voting
were in getting the right to vote. We take
That's very good.
right to vote, and our struggle to get it.
Well, it goes back to this, Dean. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
If it rains, we won't vote. We won't go out to vote. And so with the early voting, it gave us time to go vote on those sunshiny days, or when we didn't have an appointment, or those types of things, you know.
Well, do you know, Dean, jumping in, do you know the state I live in, Mississippi, does not have early voting? And it has been voted down in the Jackson, Mississippi legislation numerous times to not allow the state of Mississippi, red in nature, to have early voting, because some of these Republicans who are in office will probably be voted out because Afro-Americans are coming back to Mississippi.
Right.
And if they had, like you said, the early voting opportunities, it could spell doom for some of those Republicans who know that if it rains, we ain't going to vote.
Exactly.
But here's the point I also want to make on the heels of what you just said is we have to continue to share with our young people what it took for us to get these rights.
Exactly.
And we must, and at our church, we talk about getting out to vote. I don't tell anybody who to vote for. That's not my call. I can't do that. Right. But I can encourage you to get out and vote, be a participant, and not let the deaths and the beatings of those who fought for this right go and be in vain.
That's right. That's right. That's right.
Be in vain. Good talking point. Good talking point.
Yeah, I thought that's.
Sister Margie Watkins is still with us tonight. Sister Margie, you got anything you want to say?
I told Dr. Mine I was just a good listener. I'm not much of a talker, but I've enjoyed it all.
Okay, God bless.
It's all true of what you have been saying about the white privilege and that kind of stuff.
Yes, and you probably during your lifetime have seen some examples of that coming to the forefront. Would you attest to that being true?
Well, I guess we were raised up kind of sheltered. My father he didn't believe in too much in dealing with white people.
Right.
And by him being a landowner, he didn't have to depend on them for anything.
Okay.
So we were really sheltered a little bit from white people.
But with just that statement there you made, he could be a threat to white people because he was a landowner and he was independent and he did not have to depend upon them. He could be looked upon as a threat to them.
Yeah, he held his ground. I'll put it that way.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. Awesome input. I sure thank you, Sister Watkins, for coming in. Is Pastor Curtis White still with us? I'm loving this. I'm loving this tonight. Is Pastor White still with us? All right, he may have signed off. Well, again, it's been another awesome discussion with the panelists concerning the critical race theory. On tomorrow night, we're going to deal with another aspect, the 1619 project, that's going to be interesting as well. Another concept, another look, a perspective on this critical race theory. Listen, I think my time is up tonight. Let us pray. Father, in the name of Christ, we thank you for this experience tonight of us being able to hear from you as you've given us information from the printed text that will cause us to think, cause us to look, and cause us to appreciate knowledge, because knowledge allows us understanding. And so, God, I'm grateful for every person who's participated on tonight. Pray that you'll sow back into them what they've sown into this discussion. Thank you for Brother Thomas Robinson, who has been a blessing to us these 2 nights, and continue to bless him in mighty ways. Thank you for our state convention having a fall session that we can continue to build believers up and understanding of the way, will, and word of God. And so, God, as we leave from these airways, but never from your care, we ask for your covering, God. Your covering be upon each of us until we shall join again tomorrow, if it be your will, to share other nuggets of truths with the material that's before us. Bless us and keep us, make your face smile upon us, be gracious unto us, and God, in all things, give us your peace. It is in Jesus' name we count it all done.
Jesus.
Amen. God bless you. Thank you so much. Look to see you on tomorrow.